I'm Lisa.
Lisa,
with
excuse me.
Indivisible.
Sorry. Yes, great to meet you.
Yeah.
Good to see you again.
You too.
All right. Welcome, everybody.
Yeah, a couple updates.
As usual, Jimmy has his weekly update. Go ahead.
Right.
Sorry, go ahead.
So you folks might have heard that the Department of Justice has requested a search warrant for IP addresses and personal information stored on the server of a private company, helped organize protests against President Trump's inauguration. This is in violation of the Constitution, and Congressman Gabbard has spoken out and condemned this action, saying, quote, it reeks of actions that Presidents Nixon and Johnson took against Americans protesting the war in Vietnam. Our country is founded on the rule of law, which protects the right to free speech, prohibits the government from violating our personal privacy with baseless warrants. These fundamental rights and protections separated a democracy from dictators around the world who seek to silence and intimidate their political opponents to maintain power. In addition, you guys, I don't think a lot of you guys were here last week, so to recap on the unfortunate incidents in Charlottesville. She denounced the racist demonstrations and deadly violence we have seen last week, 2 weeks ago, by members of the KKK, neo-Nazis, other white supremacists, and called Americans to do the same, saying white supremacist ideology has no place in our country. She also announced the president's statement on military action in Venezuela, in which the president said, quote, I'm not going to rule out a military option. We have many options for Venezuela, including a possible military option if necessary. Saying, well, essentially Representative Gabbard said these residual effects and these statements, so to speak, have an effect of hardening North Korea, for example, stance and determination to hold on nukes. With that, happy to take any questions you folks have.
So let's go back to your first comment. There was a bill, I understand there's a bill in the House to censure the president for his statements. Has she signed on to that?
She has.
She has.
Okay, good.
Congress.
Great. Yay, round of applause.
Appreciate
that.
Good,
Yeah.
thank you. It's unacceptable.
Yes.
And I don't know if there are any other efforts coming through the House along those lines, but if there are, we hope it goes without saying that she should be supporting that kind of stuff.
So our DC team is tracking, as you know, this is the one that she's reviewed and signed on, and our DC team continues to monitor
Okay, good.
the various pieces of
Okay.
legislation out there. So I think Jimmy has a handout to share with you, just so you have all the statements he's referring to. I know it's helpful, given that they go out in different mediums. Again, we always encourage everybody to follow her on Facebook, get the newsletters. It's a great way to stay up to date. But you know, since you guys take the effort to come every week, which we really appreciate, you know, we want to make sure you guys are all getting a printed copy of her statements and the things that she's saying on these important topics.
I was told they weren't having a meeting here last week, only going to Hanabusa's, which,
Really?
and that's why I wasn't here, and I was so bummed out when I found out even a
There
few
are two people that came, yeah.
You met.
We did. We had a private audience.
Nice job.
And Sherry was with us
Sherry,
as well.
exactly right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we talked last week.
So does Representative
Yes.
Gabbard have any thoughts about last night's speech about Afghanistan?
So the Congresswoman is in her annual training for the National Guard. I know we've mentioned that a while ago, so she hasn't issued a statement on that just yet. She will be out of the training for this week on Thursday.
And we can expect a statement, I assume.
I you know, like I said, she will be out. I can't say when we'll have a statement out on that just yet. So, but know that she's aware, and our office is monitoring the situation and the statement. So.
A couple weeks ago I mentioned that when Representative Gabbard was in Kailua at the town hall, I think it was in March, she mentioned she was herself, nobody asked her, she was curious about finding if an anti-missile defense system, the THAAD system, would be deployed in Hawaii or not, because it is deployed on the mainland, it's deployed in Alaska, but Hawaii does not have one.
Right.
And I was just curious if there's any follow-up. I think she's on the proper committee for that, isn't she?
So, I mean, this is an ongoing conversation. I know you guys have seen some of the news articles that have come out in the Star Advertiser about missile defense and where both the Hawaii delegation is and Pacific Command here. The latest statement that Tulsi has put out, or the Congresswoman has put out, is that she feels the next step is to put more interceptors in Alaska. Again, there's kind of more technical discussions
Sure.
of how the physics of it work, you know, and again, these are situations where you're like almost trying to hit a bullet with a bullet. And so, as of now, and my understanding is that that position is in line with Admiral Harris at Pacific Command, also putting more interceptors in Alaska to protect Hawaii, as well as taking steps. The Congresswoman has supported language in the National Defense Authorization Act to put a defense of Hawaii radar in place here to assist in strengthening missile defense here in Hawaii.
On that same issue, we can't think strictly in military terms. I mean, I'm a little bit alarmed, like very alarmed, by the escalation in martial rhetoric from the executive office. And right now, we don't even have an ambassador, State Department ambassador to South Korea, or an assistant secretary for East Asia Pacific Bureau.
Yeah, the Congresswoman shares your concern on the rhetoric. I mean, she's called for diplomacy in this situation and not more rhetoric that just escalates, you know, possible war, honestly. She's definitely there.
And I think what we need to do is that, you know, the War Powers Act is pretty ineffective. So what we need to do is dust off the Tim Kaine, John McCain bipartisan legislation in 2014 that kind of puts a limit on, you know, war powers by the Commander-in-Chief and gives congressional oversight. And I think this is not a Democratic-Republican issue, but it's something we need to do as a nation.
Yeah, and we can pass it on to the Congresswoman. You know, she's made a couple of different statements. I don't know that it's in your handout this week, but in previous weeks she's talked in depth about this. You know, including just the United States' position on regime change wars. You know, and that, you know, what's going on in the Middle East is emboldening, you know, Kim Jong-un to continue his missile test because he's worried, okay, well, the U.S. is just going to come and take me out. So, you know, this is, again, the Congresswoman is on the relevant committees. She's monitoring these situations very closely, but we'll pass that along.
I would encourage her just on that anti-missile defense system. I mean, I understand that the possibility exists that placing things in Alaska would actually benefit us, but you know, a little bit of detail or elucidation about that wouldn't hurt. I mean, we could, you know, understand perhaps, you know, outright if placing a THAAD system here were not as beneficial as having it here for some, you know, reasons of, like you say, trajectory or timing or something. But I mean, you know, I think the populace would still be able to comprehend a basic level of explanation.
Right.
Is the only missile defense have to be land-based? I mean, with all the ships here, there must be missile defense that are on ships too, isn't there?
Yeah, and I'm by no means an expert on missile defense. My understanding is there are, you know, capabilities of the U.S. military based here, but I couldn't speak to those specifically. I also don't have a specific statement from the Congresswoman to point you to at this point, but there are things, my understanding is there are things out that Pacific Command has put out in relation to this that we'll probably talk a little bit more in detail. And I think some of those were referenced in the Star Advertiser articles. I believe we've included those in previous handouts, but not in this week. But yeah, I mean, definitely recommended to look at those, and then if there's any future kind of further clarification on it, we'll definitely share that with you guys. So.
Will it be shared publicly as well?
As of now, there's nothing that we're you know, have slated, but if anything were to come out, if there are any updates, we can share it with your group when you guys come in.
Well, but yes, and I appreciate that, but may I also assume that it would hit the news?
Yeah, likely.
Yeah, I think
given how you know, much focus is put on this topic, you know, and just know, you know, what we're sharing with you in your handouts isn't something you have to come here every week to get. You know, this is things that the Congresswoman is sharing, you know, with her newsletter, everyone that's signed up, you know, on Facebook and various, you know, forms of social media. So, you know, feel free to sign up to those if you can't make it every week, and you can stay in the loop that way. it's a great way to stay in the loop on what she's saying and how she's weighing in on these different issues.
Okay, which brings up my point, and I really don't mean to be snarky with this,
Yes.
but it's probably going to sound snarky. We come in and we hear her positions on different things, and we read the statements, and that's all well and good. What is she doing? So I understand she has signed on for the censure bill.
Yep.
Yay, I see here that she has, she was a co-sponsor of this GI bill. Okay.
Right.
Run us through what she's doing. When we say she's on the relevant committees, what does she do? Because we all know words are cheap. What is she doing to support the words with actions?
Is there a specific?
So,
I mean,
So to narrow that a little bit, she's on the Foreign Affairs Committee,
Thank
right?
you.
Yeah. Is the Foreign Affairs Committee she's on?
Yep.
she is on the Foreign Affairs Committee
Okay.
and on the House Armed Services
So
Committee.
can you give us an idea what role, if any, the House Foreign Affairs Committee plays with respect to what's going on in North Korea? And is there some way that can be a platform, for action to, mediate?
So, I mean, in terms of her role on the Foreign Affairs Committee, the things that she's physically doing, if that is the question, the Congresswoman is regularly, as you know, the committee has oversight, but they don't have, there are 3 branches of government, the executive branch acts and the President acts in his own capacity. So, the Congresswoman still attends briefings when the Congress is in session on a lot of these various issues to remain up to speed and, in touch with everything. While there's not a specific bill per se that committee passes out of its, jurisdiction every year, there's various pieces of legislation that the entire committee will get behind, or letters that they'll send to the executive branch. And so there's numerous letters that the Congresswoman has signed on and actions that she's taken to call for various things. Again, like we've shared them in previous weeks in your different handouts, letters that she signed on to in her capacity as a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee or as a member of the House Armed Services Committee. So again, like we'll continue to share things like that, relevant letters that she's signed on or things, actions that she's taken. The handout is really our effort, to have that dialogue with you all, we try to put things, bills that she's co-sponsored, actions that she's taken, concrete things that she's doing each week so that we can sit down and discuss those, and I get it, it becomes a kind of a broad thing, it's Washington, it's thousands of miles
No,
away,
I
and it's
don't
going,
mean
well,
that at all.
what is she doing, you know what I mean, in general,
She's condemning the Justice Department's politically motivated search warrant. Yay.
Right.
And what other action is she taking? Is she speaking with other members of Congress? Is she coordinating with the rest of the Hawaii delegation? Is she going directly to Jeff Sessions? What is she actually doing? Condemning is nice, but this is really a serious issue.
I see. So on this specific issue, you'd like to know what further.
For example, what is
How's she using her voice to cause action to happen?
Thank you. Perfectly said.
And like I said, the way she's speaking out on this is twofold. One, the statement that we just read, and then the statement that we're sharing with you all, that gets sent out to everyone. As you know, she has quite a following, and both here in Hawaii and nationally, and so she's using her voice to get that message out. In addition to that, she's taking action and signing her name onto this bill as well. So, these are the concrete things we can point to for you guys. At the same time, like I said, while she's been here, she has been in annual training with the National Guard this month. So,
Is she on some subcommittees of that other larger committee too?
I'm sorry.
Is she on some subcommittees of the Armed Forces Committee?
Sure. I mean, we can actually get you guys a list. Would that be helpful? Maybe next week when you guys come, we can get a list of the committees that she's on, and that way you guys have that. It's also listed on her website too, and we try to put relevant things that are if she's attended something or she's signed onto a specific letter, we'll generally put that inside your handout. each week, or we'll put something out on social media and things like that. So.
I guess, go ahead.
No.
No.
Good.
Jonathan
Go
Pope.
ahead.
No, I think that's an excellent way of communicating.
I guess
appreciate it.
overall, I think the priority for the people in this room, and I know she does lots of things, are the assaults on the institutions of democracy. And we would like her to loud and vociferously and articulately understand what those issues are, whether it's a censure for the president or, you know, those are the issues that come to the top. If you don't have a framework for causing compromise to happen, then we're in big trouble. So that, I believe, I think folks in here would agree, are the priority issues. So here's one for you. Maybe you can put it on the list to have her look into. A number of us are very concerned about Sinclair Broadcasting, which was just allowed by the FCC to purchase 52 regional local television and radio stations, which the stat I heard, and I don't know if it's exactly correct, is they have a 92% penetration in rural markets. They are obviously partisan. They do not broadcast facts. And the example is the gentleman Gianforte, who punched the reporter the night of the election. They just simply didn't broadcast that on their TV station. So what could she do? What kind of action could she take to bring that issue up? Because you're getting to state-run media. That's where we're headed.
And you know, I'll be sure to pass that along.
Could you? I would like to hear back from you about what, and maybe she's not on that committee. Maybe she knows somebody on a committee who could take it.
Well, and even if she's not, there's action she's taken. You know, the Congresswoman has long fought for net neutrality. You know, ensuring that we are. Yeah, she spoke out against the Time Warner Cable AT&T merger to ensure that no one company has control over all of these various services that are a public right. So. The Congresswoman in the past has very much spoken out against this, and she's been a very, very strong advocate for exactly what you're saying.
Okay.
So
I'd
I
love
will be
to hear
sure
what she might do, or if there's a bill. Is there a bill in the House?
Yeah,
We just talked with them. We just spoke with
yeah.
the senators' offices. We've let them know this is a concern. So
Have they signed on to anything?
I don't know if there's anything in the works, but
I see.
Yeah.
what you're talking about is an attack on the institutions of democracy.
So, and what
That's
we
what
can
I'm
do
worried
too is, I don't know, Jimmy, if you could note this. I'll include her statement in your handout next week on the AT&T merger. That was really great. I think it outlines where she stands generally on these types of things, and I think it would really be helpful for you guys just to get a sense of where your Congresswoman stands on the issue. So
kind of to sort of pile on what Lisa was saying, there was an FCC rule limiting the percentage of households that could be reached by a single network, and that was 39%.
Right.
And because of who the president's appointed to head the FCC, they're getting rid of that rule, and that's how come Sinclair
That's
can
why they were
take over
permitted.
this huge percentage of
That's right.
households. So, since the FCC can't be relied on to protect us,
Exactly.
I think we need a law.
Exactly. There needs to be an intervention by Congress, which has, they're one of the three parts of government.
Sure. Well, like I said, we'll pass this on to our DC team, and they can take a look and see if there's any actions already in the works. So.
I have a question. With everything that's going on, is the Congresswoman seeing any movement from the Republican side to join with Democrats on some of these very critical issues that are coming up right now? Or is it still in the House also very partisan?
So that's a fantastic question. The Congresswoman has actually been somebody who she just spoke about this. I think a few of you were there at the Democratic Party of Hawaii rally over the weekend, where she said, she had spent some time with Senator Akaka, who she had worked with in the past up in Washington, and she said, regardless of everything going on, we can't forget that we represent aloha in Hawaii, and that she's you know, bringing the aloha spirit to Hawaii, to Washington D.C., and still that regardless of the fact that we may always disagree with, you know, the other side of the aisle, we have to work to find things that we do agree on and move that forward, just so that there's not just this stagnation. I think, you know, I've heard her comment recently on, you know, there is frustration very visibly on the Republican side of, you know, the failed healthcare bill and different things. So I can't speak specifically to which members are, you know, reaching across the aisle on the Democratic side, but just know that the Congresswoman has always advocated for that, you know, in terms of, you know, finding, regardless of all the disagreements, finding things that we can agree on, you know, to help people and care about people and move that forward, you know, as a legislator.
As a follow-up to that, I would add that having listened to part of Paul Ryan's town hall last night, he was very proud of the fact that they had passed 300 bills in the first 7 months of the presidency. And he proudly mentioned the Dodd-Frank bill, which was really weakening Dodd-Frank. And there are so many things that we just don't know about because because we're not legislators and such, but also because they're under the radar because the president is so distracting. And I'm just concerned, and I just bring it up as a concern because I don't even know what kind of question to ask, but I'd love to know what has been passed that we're gonna someday find out some disastrous result. It has limited our freedoms, our you know, things like protecting against the banks going into a 2007 or 8 recession again.
Yeah, and I mean,
nursing home thing.
Yeah,
Regulations.
and on that topic, you know, especially specifically on the last one, you know, the Congresswoman is a co-sponsor and has pushed for the reinstatement of Glass-Steagall to ensure that we don't run into a situation like this again where the banks becoming too big to fail. You know, she's long advocated for Wall Street reform and, you know, really looks out for pieces of legislation that work to hamper that. So there's more information on that on her website. I know anytime we have something out on Wall Street reform, we definitely include it in your handouts as well. So, you know, that's a core position for her, you know. But again, you know, I mean, I think this is something that, you know, based on the positions that we try to, you know, the positions that the Congresswoman is taking weekly, that we give to you guys, you know, I hope that's indicative of where she stands on certain issues and know that, you know, as she's voting on various pieces of legislation, she's looking at those aspects, you know, and where does this go? Is this a you know, a baby step towards X, you know, and so these are things that we are looking at. So.
Anybody else have questions?
Just curious, does Representative Gabbard take any contributions from the NRA?
She does not take any political action committee funds from anyone. She recently made that announcement on that decision, so she does not take contributions from any special interests.
Ever, or just no longer?
No longer, yeah. So she did previous, yeah, but she recently made that decision to no longer accept contributions from any special interest groups. So.
That's great.
Yeah.
In the past, has she taken money from the
Not that I'm aware of, no. Yeah. And the contribution side, I should just highlight, because we're the federal office, we actually can't delve too far into that. There's a real specific divide between the campaign, her political campaign, and her fundraising and all of that, and our official office and our function. You know, our function is, you know, her DC team focuses on legislation. Our Oahu team, we do a lot of casework. You know, we help work with various constituents to cut red tape with different federal agencies. You know, Social Security, if you're trying to get benefits, or, you know, Medicare, different things like that. So Jimmy and a lot of the caseworkers you see here across all different issue areas, from immigration to healthcare, are helping people in Hawaii, in the district, every day with just various issues and challenges that they face. So that's a lot of what our office functions, and that remains separate from the campaign.
Can I ask you a question on that? 2 or 3 months ago, we were hearing that the Trump administration, executive branch, were not cooperating with requests from Democratic congressmen about that. Have you seen a level of appropriate on constituent requests or information requests, and that they were generally saying we don't respond to Democratic congresspeople's requests? Are you seeing any? Do you have open access, and can you do constituent service and follow up on information requests, like you've seen it in the last years? Or I'm just curious.
So I can't speak to what each one of our caseworkers are experiencing, or
Right.
what caseworkers
haven't,
across the nation are. But we've continued to engage with federal agencies. We've continued to request, and that's kind of the difference. A lot of times, you're an individual and you're trying to work with the VA to get your benefits issue cleared up. When a congressional office comes in and sends a letter on your behalf and says what's going on with this, we didn't see a change, so to speak, in terms of the VA's response on that. They still respond rather quickly to a congressional office inquiry.
And generally across the board, you've not seen any specific change. You're getting replies
We
and
are,
assistant
our
as
operation
before.
continues
Okay,
to
that's
operate,
interesting.
so, yeah.
Does Tulsa plan to vote to raise the debt ceiling?
So I don't know right now. It's funny, she was just talking about this recently, where a lot of the groups in Hawaii we've been hearing, normally what happens is and Congress has about, I think it was 4 days when they go back to do all of the appropriation bills to somehow pull it all together. So how's that for planning? It's possible that it'll all get wrapped into an omnibus, but right now we just don't know what's going to happen. I know a lot of the different local groups that are looking at funding are asking for a continuing resolution, which is not something you normally hear. Normally, that's a sign of dysfunction, right? They can't come to an agreement on the budget, so they just extend the current levels out. They basically kick the can down the road a couple of months, A lot of people, because they don't know, given how the president's budget was laid out, and the congresswoman issued a statement on that. I know that was in your handouts a few weeks back. But we don't know, and a lot of the different groups here are asking, hopefully, that it's just a continuing resolution, because at least that they can count on the funding that they've had, rather than who knows what's going to happen.
The debt ceiling is a bit different.
Yeah, I understand that, but I mean, right now this is kind of where we're at, and this is probably the most information that we know right now. So I don't know how she would vote.
Actually, they're going to run on. They have to raise the debt ceiling. They have to have a vote on that.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know what the details of that would be, or how she would vote as of now. So yeah, if more information comes available on that,
that must be. Can you get back to us on that? And I would urge you that I would like our congressperson to allow the Republicans who run the government to pass and extend the debt ceiling. And that's their responsibility, running the government.
That's right.
To pass the debt ceiling.
Yep.
And I would hope all Democrats would say that's your job, and if you want my vote, there's a high price for that vote. And so that's my position. I'd like to know, and I'm sure it'll be coming up in the next week. What is our congressperson's position on that?
Right, and like I said, note that we're closely monitoring that, and how she'll vote. As this comes forward, we can keep you guys in the loop once she does. Usually, a lot of times
not
they're
raising
reviewing.
the debt ceiling isn't an option.
I will definitely pass that along. Yes.
I would say it's not my problem.
It's the Republicans. Well,
no, we'll pass along your
a
feedback
lot
to
of
the
people
congresswoman.
will get hurt if that happens, and you're right. It's the Republicans'
responsibility.
It is their responsibility.
They're running the government.
Yes, they are.
Right. Thank you, guys. Anything else?
Just a quick comment.
Sure.
I think that prior to annexation, many people in Hawaii specifically didn't want Hawaii to be part of the United States because the United States was so racist. And that racism impacted people from Hawaii. Hawaiian royalty, when visiting the mainland, had to stay in black-only places. So I think it falls to Hawaii's representatives to stand particularly strong against racism.
Absolutely.
So, and you know, as you see in your guys' handout, you know, the Congresswoman's statement on this is unequivocal.
Right.
It's, you know, these ideologies of white supremacist groups have no place in our country, was her exact wording. You know, this is where she stands on it, and, you know, she's very firm on this. You know, I thought, you know, the Congresswoman is not someone who says things lightly. So, I mean, I hope that would be a good indication of where she stands.
So,
on the issue,
so there's kind of a two-pronged thing. I think as a representative of Hawaii, it's her job to bring aloha and the spirit of cooperation, but I think it's also her job to stand strong and loud against racism, which she's doing, but I'm just encouraging her in that, and encouraging to do more, and to, you know, applauding what she's doing and saying, you know, more will not be amiss.
Thank you. I'll pass that along.
And a local example of that is the discussion about President McKinley's statue at McKinley High School and changing the name back to Honolulu High School. And I think that's going to be up for more discussion too, because that was another example of white supremacy.
Yes, right.
Well, we'll definitely, like I said, we'll pass this along, and should there be any further statements, you know, we'll share it with the group.
Okay, anybody else have anything? Charles, you have something?
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Sorry. I'm going to let Jimmy do next week, because I feel like I talk over him too much.